What's up, you fucking nerds? Before we get started, I'd like to apologize that for those of you that follow me on Instagram, I haven't been posting a lot of pictures lately. A lot of that has to do with the fact that it is hot as fucking balls here in North Carolina right now. And going out and doing guerrilla photography is a task in its own right. As you know, I do have some issues with my hip and stuff like that. So, getting out there and doing guerrilla photography in this heat is it wears you out, for lack of a better description. Um, but uh, but yeah. So let's get started. As many of you know, I attend a lot of conventions. Um, And this about 2 weeks ago, I had the opportunity to go to Heroes Con in Charlotte, North Carolina. Um, as many of you know, I'm from Fayetteville, North Carolina, so it wasn't too terribly far of a drive for me. I was it was an unexpected trip, to say the least. I wasn't really supposed to go to Heroes Con, but ended up getting a invitation to show up. Um, so by the way, the thing, one of the one of my friends said that I say that quite a bit, so I'm going to try to curb myself from doing it as much. Anyway, let's start with talking about Charlotte. Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm really not a fan of Charlotte. Has nothing to do with the people, has nothing to do with the culture, has nothing to do with anything like that. Has to do with the layout of the city, honestly. I don't get to Charlotte too often. I've been there a few times in the 90s when I used to skate. The last time I went to Charlotte for Heroes Con was 1995, the first year that it was in the Charlotte Convention Center. I've been a few times since the 90s. Charlotte has some great bookstores. Charlotte has some great comic book stores. Heroes are hard to find. Is the comic shop that actually hosts Heroes Con, and I've always found merchandise I want to buy there. But the town itself, the way it's laid out, the way everything's spread out, I'm just not a huge fan of the city itself. Parking sucks in Charlotte. You have to basically, especially if you're parking anywhere towards downtown or any of the major metropolitan areas where there's not shopping centers or traditional strip malls, you have to park and walk. And in the heat that we've had the last few weeks, that sucked bad. But Charlotte aside, let's talk about the con itself. So, as I stated a few minutes ago, or a minute or two ago, Heroes Con, I haven't been there since 1995. Last time I went there was with a bunch of my nerd friends here in Fayetteville that used to hang out at Fantasy Central, a comic shop that is long defunct here in Fayetteville. Actually, Fantasy Central was in Spring Lake, but which is like a suburb of the Nom. But the funny thing is, I actually ran into two of the people that I went to Heroes Con with in 95 that I used to hang out with back in the day, which was an interesting conversation. Relinda, that's a shout out to you if you're listening. But Heroes Con was a breath of fresh air. I mean, I go to a lot of conventions, and there's a lot of different types of conventions I go to. All of them are nerd related, but I go to a lot of anime conventions. I also go to a lot of nerd pop culture conventions like GalaxyCon, things like that. Um, I go to a lot of anime conventions. We're talking Anime Week in Atlanta, Animazement, NekoCon, KatsuCon, MatsuриCon, Winter Matsuri, TechoCon in Pittsburgh, Anime New Jersey. Um, I also do Animate, which is kind of like a pop culture anime con that's put on by GalaxyCon. But the one thing that set Heroes Con aside from all those other conventions that I've been to and that I go to on a regular basis is that Heroes Con is a legitimate 100% comic convention. Um, it's not a pop culture convention. It's definitely not an anime convention. And that being said, there were some things about it being a comic convention that were very refreshing, and we're going to get into that. To begin with, being a straight comic convention, I'd say probably 90% of the dealers there were all comic book dealers. I could probably count the number of actual dealers selling toys or toy dealers just in general, not comic dealers, on one hand, maybe two. No more than 10. Um, but I'd say probably only five or six. There were also some really great t-shirt dealers there that were selling some amazing um, t-shirts, pop not pop culture, but like, classic like sci-fi comics t-shirts or I bought the Imperial Grunt a Ralph Bakshi Wizards, what is it, the assassin, what something 99, I can't remember his name. I bought a shirt for him of that, you know um yeah, I mean, and then of course the artist alley was actually full of artists, and again, different than an anime con and even a pop culture con. So artist alley at a lot of anime cons and pop culture cons, there's a few artists, but it's usually artists trying to sell stuff. Like, here's my plushies that I made. Here's my buttons I made. Here's my magnets. Here's my stickers. The artist alley at Heroes Con was a majority of actual artists trying to promote their artwork and their books. They weren't trying to sell stuff. They were there for the love of the game. They were comic artists trying to, you know, build a fan base, get people to look at their artwork. Um, and the thing is, a lot of the guests, such as Scotty Young, who was probably my favorite guest that was there. I did not get to get his autograph because the line was ridiculous, but we'll go over that in a little while. But the artists were kind of peppered in with the artist alley. So when there was a signing for somebody like Scotty Young, um, people that might not normally go looking for other artists in Artist Alley were kind of forced to stand beside random artist tables and get exposure. I thought it was an interesting way of doing things. Um, yeah, it was very interesting. God, I mean, it's just, I just have a lack of words. I'm having like a writer's block right now, I guess, even though I'm not writing anything because I always, do all my videos straight from the heart. I don't do scripted videos, but yeah, it was another thing that was very refreshing is it was a drama-free convention. So I go to a lot of anime conventions, I go to a lot of pop culture conventions, and one thing that I've noticed over the past decade, actually probably longer, is anime and pop culture conventions, there's a lot of drama that goes on at these cons. I'm sure those of you who go to conventions, you can find dozens, if not hundreds, of videos about the drama that goes on. Um, you know, I don't care about anybody's politics, but and I hope you don't care about mine, but there's a lot of drama at anime and pop culture conventions, from everything that deals with cosplayers, cosplayers. There's the body shaming, and the race shaming, if you're a black cosplayer cosplaying a white character. Of course, there's the cosplayers that buy their costumes versus the cosplayers that make their costumes, and there's drama between them. There's the really pretty, you know, I guess you'd really say the really beautiful professional cosplayers versus the amateur cosplayers, and there's a lot of drama and arguing between them, and and then you know, when it comes to gender politics, I've been yelled at a convention before for using the wrong pronoun, and I mean, I'm sorry. If I use the wrong pronoun, I don't do it intentionally. 99.99% of the time, if I'm at a convention, I'm from out of town. I don't know you. If I use the wrong pronoun because I can't tell if you're boy or girl, or if you're a girl dressed as a dude, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, I really don't feel like you have the right to yell at me for using the wrong pronoun because I don't know you. I'm more than happy to use the right pronoun once we've addressed the pronoun thing, if it upsets you, but um you can't yell at me right off the bat if I don't know you, if I'm not from that area. You are a complete stranger to me. And there was no drama like that, at Heroes Con. There was a there was just like, again, yeah, I mean, no drama. There weren't any protesters outside protesting X, Y, or Z politics. There weren't any churches outside protesting that everybody who attends the con's a sinner. It was just very drama free. Um, I hate to say this. I think one of the reasons it was drama free was the demographic that attended Heroes Con. I mean, there were some teenagers there with their parents or on their own, but for the most part, the crowd at Heroes Con were all, in my opinion, from what I saw, mostly Gen X and older millennials. There weren't a lot of Gen Z, and there were even less Gen Alpha, and there weren't a lot of boomers. It was just Gen X and millennials, older millennials, and had a very laid back feeling. Everybody was cool with each other. Um, it was just fun. It was refreshing. It was relaxing. I didn't have to walk on eggshells all weekend, worrying that I was going to either upset somebody for saying the wrong thing, um, you know, upset somebody for looking at somebody's butt who's wearing a revealing costume. It's like, which again, I know cosplay is not consent, I, 100% agree with that, that cosplay is not consent. I'm not going to go up and grab your butt, but I'm a dude. I'm a Gen X dude. It's like if you're wearing a skimpy outfit, chances are I'm going to look at your butt. If you don't like that, then that's maybe something you shouldn't wear. I'm not going to I'm not going to say something to you. I'm not going to, grope you or anything. That is an issue at cons, but, you know, sorry, if you're an attractive young lady and you have a nice butt or you're wearing a revealing costume, yeah, I'm probably going to take a look. Um, but, you know, like I said, at some cons, like you'll literally get screamed at for that by either other attendees who don't, think you're being, chauvinistic pig or the actual cosplayer themselves. And there wasn't any drama like that here. There was just lots of just everybody was cool with each other. Like, again, like I said, there were a few teenagers. Um, you know, I would say, like I said, maybe 10% younger crowd, Gen Alpha, maybe Gen Z or Gen Z, Gen Alpha. I mean, but the majority was Gen X and older millennials. And like I said, it was, a fun, relaxed convention and everybody got along. As for the guests, like I said, the guests were peppered in between, all about the artist alley. And the majority of the guests, like I said, when people started lining up for autographs and stuff, like the lines were horrendous. There were a lot of people here. It was a very large, very crowded convention. But even though it was large and it was crowded, it wasn't overwhelming. Um, you know, there were the only time it really got crowded where you might have to push through a crowd is at somebody's autograph line, but the crowds were extremely respectful. Um, I noticed a lot of times when people were getting signatures that the way the lines were set up, and I don't know if this was because of the staff or the attendees just being polite or a little bit of A and B, but um, when somebody was getting an autograph from a guest, they were given some room. Other attendees weren't all up on their nuts behind them. That person actually, I don't really want to say they got to have a one-on-one, but they didn't have somebody else all up in their business while they were talking to the guest or getting an autograph. Um, you know, every dealer in there was extremely friendly. Um, I didn't run into any dealers that had an attitude. There's some cons you go to where some dealers are almost frustrated with the attendees, and it's like that's one of those things I don't understand because the attendees are the reason you're there. If you're a dealer, you're there for the customer. Um, that's why, there's when I go to anime cons, um, there's certain booths that I go to regularly. Um, and I go to those booths not because I've made friends with them, but more because the owners are friendly. They're there for the attendees. They know that without the attendees, they don't have a business. It's customer service based. They are extremely friendly, extremely polite. They have they're just you know they got just good customer service. There's some dealers you go to some cons and like you ask a dealer a question about a product and they almost sigh at you and they're like, like you're bothering them. And it's like, And I don't get that. And the thing I can say about Heroes Con is, like I said, not a single dealer that I talked to, both comic or toy, what few toy ones there were, every dealer was more than happy to stop and talk about their merchandise or answer any questions or help out. Um, like I said, it was refreshing. It was everybody, all the dealers, all the artists in the artist alley, everybody was just friendly and cool with each other. They just had a great vibe. There's a buddy of mine on Facebook. Uh, he's worked with me at Animazement in the past, and he goes by the name of Dr. Gonzo. Um, and him and I talked after the con, and he said that Heroes Con is kind of like his yearly con. I don't think he really attends many anime conventions anymore. And the thing is, you got to keep in mind, I am not a comic collector. I don't collect comic books. I mean, I have maybe 20 comics to my name. I do collect graphic novels. The reason I don't collect comics is I don't have the patience to read a story 24 pages at a time. And when it comes to collecting, I don't really collect comics, as a monetary collecting type thing. That's what I do, action figures and stuff. Like I keep my Star Wars vintage collection on the card because that's one of those things that I collect. But when it comes to comics, I want to read a comic. Um, I don't slab books and stuff like that. I basically buy the graphic novel after several issues have come out because it allows me to sit down for 30 minutes and read rather than 5 minutes when I blow through a 24-page comic. You know, so going to an actual comic convention wasn't my normal, I guess, not the normal place that I go when it comes to conventions. And it was a big eye opener because, in contrast to pop culture conventions and anime conventions, um, a lot less chaos, a lot less drama. It was a relaxing weekend, and I really enjoyed it. I'd really like to go back next year, if all possible. It, yeah, I mean, the store in Charlotte, Heroes are hard to find. Um, like I said, that's the convention that they put on, and they did an amazing job. Um, the dealers at the con were amazing. The attendees at the con were amazing. The artists in Artist Alley were amazing. Um, those of my friends that are actual artists, I've, messaged them and told them that they really should consider going to Heroes Con next year and trying to get an Artist Alley table because, like I said, it's artist, more artist centric, less stuff, more artists. And I feel like my friends that are artists would get more traction at a convention like Heroes Con than at a convention like, I don't know, um, any of the anime conventions, any of the pop culture conventions. I just feel like they'd get more traction as an artist, building a fan base from something like Heroes Con rather than an anime or pop culture convention. So, but yeah, that's my thoughts on Heroes Con 2025. Um, so as you've noticed, as this video is played, I have uh, evenly timed all the pictures that I took at the convention. I wanted to film but I did not get the opportunity to film. And based on some other walkthroughs of the convention, I feel like I might have had an issue anyways. There are a few people that I've watched reviews that they've done or walkthroughs of Heroes Con, and from what I understand, they had to have a press pass to do that. I think that might have had to do with the fact that a lot of industry guests were peppered throughout the artist alley. So I think if you decide to go to Heroes Con after this review next year, you may need to check into the policy on filming if you decide to do it. Because, like I said, I believe you have to have a press pass to film. They do not have an issue with you taking pictures, but filming, like I said, I believe you have to have a press pass. So, for those of you thinking about going in 2026, keep that in mind if you're planning on filming. Before I wrap this up, I am still working on the Gorilla Toy Photography Survival Guide video. I have not given up on that. As you know, I don't script my videos, but for that one, I'm actually writing up a lot of notes for me to follow during that because there's a lot of stuff to unpack with the Gorilla Toy Photography video, and I don't want to miss anything. Also, I have some toy reviews on my backlog. I have a Mega Man review that I'm planning on doing. I'm going to do a review and a comparison. I have I just got recently from Trilogy Comics the MDLX Mega Man diecast action figure, and I'm going to do a comparison with that from the new Jada Toys Mega Man action figure, as well as the Mega Man Nendroid. I mean, I figure I got it. I might as well, do a comparison between the three. There might be somebody out there who's curious about that. I also have a few other toys on the backlog. I think tomorrow I'm going to do a lunchtime review of some G.I. Joe Classified or maybe my Rogue 97. And I'm also going to do a lunchtime review. I don't know. And then I've also got some other toys on the backlog that I'm eventually going to get to, as well as a few, I don't know. I'm going to do some. So I've got some figures that I have to weather. I'm going to do some videos on those eventually, including a Sand Trooper that I need to weather. I have another Sand Trooper on the way. I've been stockpiling Mafex Sand Troopers. I know that Hasbro's got one in the pipeline, but I've always liked the Mafex Sand Trooper. And because Hasbro has one in the pipeline, the price has been going down on the Mafex Sand Troopers online. So, like I said, I've been getting a few of them to stockpile. I also have some Halo figures I have to weather. And then, of course, I have some figures that, like I'm doing some projects for some toy photography projects, and there's a few things that I need to do. Like I need to sand an edge down on a sword that I had to repair for Raja Ghul. And I have to make a cigarette for Jim Gordon. And a few other things like that. I have a Planet of the Apes figure that was mailed with two right arms, but I have a way of fixing one right arm to make it a left arm. And I need to do a video. I'm thinking I'm just gonna do a video with like just a bunch of things compiled all together, kind of like a toy photography, prepping video of just a few things that I'm planning on that I need to get done. But on that note, if you guys made it to the end, thank you. And I hope you enjoyed the pictures from Heroes Con, and we'll see you next time.